Here's the translation of the text to English. Murder is often associated with ugliness and evil that flows from the eyes of the killer, making their features appear frightening and hideous, and that beauty is always synonymous with goodness. This is what we've become accustomed to every time we hear stories about serial killers and murderers. But today's story will change your view on this theory, and it will show you that not everything beautiful is good, and that there are people who are demons in the guise of angels. This person, specifically, is the embodiment of pure evil. So, what are the events of this story? All of this and more will be revealed in the episode. But before diving into the details and events, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell to stay updated with all our latest content. Here's the translation of the text to English. The mother of Theodore Robert Bundy, who would later become one of the most notorious serial killers in the world, gave birth to him on November 24, 1946, in the United States, specifically in the city of Fairmont, Florida. His early life was difficult, as he was born out of an illegitimate relationship, which would have a significant impact on his future. One day, he woke up to a shocking revelation about his fake family. His older sister told him that she was actually his mother, and that his parents were, in fact, his grandparents. The reasons behind this lie varied in different accounts, but most agreed that his grandparents were very religious. After discovering their daughter's actions, they feared the shame it would bring them, especially after the torment of learning the true identity of the child's father. They decided to adopt the child to avoid disgrace. However, when the older sister, who was actually his mother, decided to get married, she wanted to take him with her. But after he refused to go with her as her brother, she decided to tell him the truth. The frightening part of these events is that he didn't react or show any emotion at that moment. Indeed, after his mother's marriage in 1951, he moved in with her and her new husband, Johnny Bundy, who agreed to give the boy his last name, thus acquiring the name he would later become known by. From a young age, Ted showed signs of being different from others and was notably intelligent and academically successful. He outshone his peers and even those older than him, making him the center of attention. However, he was shy and not very social. He continued his studies until he graduated in 1965 and enrolled at the University of Washington, where he studied Chinese language. However, he left school after 2 years to volunteer for Nelson Rockefeller's presidential campaign and began participating in various sports to gain more popularity and admiration. But it seems his resentment towards his mother grew. Ironically, he sought to form numerous relationships with girls and began his first relationship with Elizabeth Klopfer. It is believed that both she and his mother were responsible for what Ted would later become. Elizabeth decided to break up with him after a while due to his lack of commitment to his studies and their relationship. This breakup shocked Ted, but he later returned to his studies and majored in psychology. Once he obtained his degree, he decided to enroll in law school. Thanks to his political connections, he was able to enroll despite failing the entrance exam. The young man succeeded in committing to his legal studies and political work. He also began taking more care of his appearance, becoming the handsome man who engaged in many relationships, all of which eventually failed due to his severe psychological issues, such as his inability to control his anger and his excessive violence towards his lovers. These psychological problems would later shape him into the ruthless killer he became. In 1974, a girl entered Ted's life, but she quickly exited it. On February 1, 1974, Linda Healy, a law student at the University of Washington, was discovered missing by her roommate, who woke up to the sound of an annoying alarm clock coming from Linda's room. When she went to wake her, she found that Linda was not there. Initially, she thought Linda had spent the night out, but when Linda's boss called to ask why she had not shown up for work, the roommate contacted Linda's family, who also had no idea where she was. Realizing something bad had happened to Linda, she immediately called the police, who began investigating her room. Everything seemed normal at first, but they noticed that some of the bed linens were missing and found small drops of blood. Here's the translation of the text to English. She began her story. The investigators were unsure whether they were dealing with a kidnapping or a murder case, as they couldn't find any leads. All they had were the drops of blood they found. The disappearances of the girls continued, and the perpetrator remained unknown. On March 12, 1974, a second girl, 19-year-old Donna Gail Manson, a university student, disappeared. She had left her dorm to attend a music concert, but was never seen again. The mysterious scenario repeated itself on April 17th of the same year when 18-year-old Susan Rancourt disappeared after going to see a movie in southeast Seattle without leaving any trace. On May 6th, another 20-year-old girl disappeared under similar circumstances. The month of June saw an increase in the number of victims, but no leads were found. With the rise in the number of victims, the level of fear among the investigators increased, and the number of investigation teams doubled, especially after they confirmed that they were dealing with a serial killer on the loose. However, for the first time since the investigation began, several witnesses came forward, coinciding with the latest kidnapping. The witnesses reported seeing a handsome young man with brown hair on the beach with two of the victims. He had a cast on his arm and asked for their help in unloading a sailboat from his car. He had asked the same of the witnesses, but they refused, especially since he claimed that the boat was a bit far from the car. Other witnesses later came forward as well. This development made the killer's days numbered, as investigators and search teams distributed the suspect's description in local newspapers and television channels. The number of kidnapping victims in Seattle alone reached 8, all of whom were young women. The investigators noticed a common thread among these victims. They were all university students aged between 18 and 22. They were all white, thin, blonde, single, and had all disappeared at night. Here's the translation of the text to English. But going back to Ted Bundy, during that time, he was working in the Services Department of Washington State. The strangest part was that he was part of the teams involved in investigations related to these missing girls. Meanwhile, the kidnapping ceased without any leads being found. During this period, they discovered the decomposed bodies of two girls, Janice Ott and Denise Naslund. The bodies were in a state of decomposition, and no evidence was found, but it didn't end there. On October 2, 1974, the city of Salt Lake in Utah woke up to its first nightmare with the disappearance of a 16-year-old girl named Nancy Wilcox, who vanished without a trace. But this was just the beginning, as 3 more girls disappeared soon after, one of them being the daughter of the city's police chief. This intensified the search efforts, but as usual, no evidence was found. In November 1974, this very day is marked as the disappearance of the killer's last victim, a woman named Carol Duranch, who managed to survive his attack. She reported to the police that she barely escaped from a man pretending to be a police officer. He had asked her to accompany him to the police station, claiming that someone was trying to steal her car. However, he surprised her by handcuffing one of her hands, but luckily, he didn't secure the other hand, allowing her to open the car door and escape. She managed to reach the police station and gave them a description of the man. This time, during the search, they found drops of blood, and after analysis, it was determined that the blood type was O positive. They began searching for anyone with this blood type in the Utah area, which had a population of 1,200,000 people. But the way Ted ended up in the hands of the police is the strangest of all. On August 16, 1975, Ted was stopped for failing to comply with a police order to stop his car. When they inspected his vehicle, they found a mask, handcuffs, and various tools, along with a ticket to a skating rink, which coincidentally was near where one of the bodies was found. This discovery prompted the police to arrest him. During a search of his home, investigators found police uniforms that the criminal had used in his recent crimes, along with more ropes, handcuffs, and adhesive tapes. They also found hair in his car that matched 3 of the victims. The girl he had attempted to kidnap was able to identify him, and with all this evidence, the police were able to arrest him. However, the only complete case against him was the attempted kidnapping of Duranch, for which he was sentenced to 15 years in prison on charges of kidnapping and assault, and he was imprisoned in Utah. Meanwhile, the police tried to build a larger case against him. During his first court hearing, Bundy decided to waive his right to an attorney and took advantage of a legal loophole that allowed him to defend himself. This gave him access to the courthouse library under the pretense of preparing his defense. But Bundy was actually planning to escape from prison. He was confident that he wouldn't be handcuffed and that the guards weren't worried about him since he had been calm throughout his imprisonment. Indeed, on June 7, 1977, he managed to escape by tricking the guards, jumping from the second floor, and heading into the mountains to hide. He stole everything he needed before being caught 2 weeks later. He tried to escape again 6 months later. This time, he had learned from his mistakes and planned his escape more cleverly. After studying the prison map, Bundy realized that his cell was directly adjacent to the warden's office, separated only by a weak wall. He bought a small saw from another inmate, and while the other prisoners were exercising or showering, Bundy began to dig through the wall. Here's the translation of the text to English. The hole he made was very small, so he had to reduce his food intake to lose weight. Unlike the first time, this time he stored up the money he would need, which was brought to him by Carol and Boone, the woman he married while in prison. When he was ready, he crawled through the hole into the warden's office. There, he changed his clothes and sneaked out through the path leading outside. He immediately stole a car and escaped far away. But despite his escape, he didn't forget his past. He resumed killing and torturing women. On January 15, 1978, just 2 weeks after his escape, Bundy broke into the Chi Omega sorority house on the campus of Florida State University in Tallahassee, where he killed 2 women and severely injured 2 others. As if the carnage of that terrifying night didn't satisfy the crazed killer, he decided to sneak into the apartment of a woman named Cheryl Thomas, where he attacked her, causing 5 fractures in her skull, a broken jaw, and a dislocated shoulder. The criminal left some of his hairs at the crime scene, and one of his victims left a deep bite mark on him, which would become one of the most crucial pieces of evidence in convicting him. The last victim of the murderous monster was a girl who was only 12 years old at the time of her death. Her remains were found decomposed near a river. Bundy's terrifying adventures ended on February 15, 1978, when he was arrested by traffic police, for the same reason as the first time. When they realized his car was stolen, they searched it and found ID cards belonging to 3 women. They immediately arrested him, and his trial thereafter captivated public attention. Especially with all the crimes he had committed, Bundy's trial was the first to be broadcast on American television. During his subsequent trials, Bundy insisted on being in the spotlight and decided to defend himself without a lawyer. However, he failed to defend himself and was convicted of all his crimes. Ted Bundy was sentenced to death by electric chair at Rayford Prison in Florida. Before his trial, he suffered mistreatment by other inmates. He also had a child with Carol and Boone, whom we mentioned earlier in this episode. During the interviews and discussions held with him, Bundy showed no remorse. He spoke proudly of all his actions. After 9 years, on January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed at the age of 42. Hundreds of people gathered outside the courthouse to celebrate his death. Although he confessed to committing many crimes, the true number of his victims remains unknown. Investigations suggest that Bundy killed between 30 and 40 women. Some other investigations suggest that the number of his victims might be over 100, making him one of the most notorious and brutal serial killers in American history, and perhaps the very definition of pure evil. His crime stories have inspired many writers and filmmakers. Many books have been published telling his story, bringing an end to the story of the handsome killer. And that, my friends, is all we have for this episode. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any new content.